Welcome. I think we're started and going here, boss.
All right, here we go. So, first of all, tonight's discussion is on careers in entertainment. This was one of the topics that was very desirable upon our list from educators. So we thought maybe we should approach this and maybe give you an idea of what some of those jobs are that aren't the normal jobs, but also maybe what some of those jobs might pay in certain circumstances. And we'll just kind of go from there. So, anything
And
you
how
want to add to
it's
that, Jeff?
how it's an easy path to getting rich quick scheme.
Oh,
wait,
geez.
no, that's a different industry.
No. I don't think so. So if you have any questions as we go forward through this broadcast, just feel free to throw them out into the chat, and we'll mark them as questions, and we'll either circle back to them or we'll catch them as we go. So let's go ahead and start with the presentation. Careers in entertainment. There is more than just being a movie star, right? Everybody always notices that the first big item that you have in the film industry is how to be a movie star. I want to be a movie star. I want to be in front of the camera. I want to be famous. That's what a lot of students want. And
That was your
unfortunately,
first goal, Fletch, the industry.
yes, absolutely. I just want to be famous. What they don't kind of grasp is, number one, how terrible fame really is. It's very much a double-edged sword. But also, the likelihood of making it as a movie star is probably the most difficult of all jobs.
It's a hard one. It's a lottery.
It's very much a lottery. And for those of you in Vegas, you might as well just go down and put your money on number 9 and spin the wheel. So we wanted to try and avoid talking about some of the more obvious careers and really kind of focus on some of those careers or that people just don't even know exists, or maybe they're just not completely familiar with. So let's go back to our little presentation, and we're going to go to on-set jobs. So these are the jobs of all the people when you're watching a movie that kind of scroll up at the end of a movie, and everybody's kind of, most people yawn, and all filmmakers are glued to their seats trying to see who did this or who did that, or maybe even looking for themselves in the credits. But, I mean, these are the obvious jobs. And so we're going to cover some of these really quickly. Now, in the website, we track a handful of different jobs. And they really are probably the most prominent jobs on a movie, which is the writer, the producer, the director, the cinematographer, the editor, and of course the actors. And these are the ones that we track through our system right now. But there are so many more, and we all kind of know what those jobs are. Are there any questions about any of these particular positions that you might want to know more about? So just put them in the comments there, and I'll circle back and we'll kind of talk about these. But otherwise, I'm going to skip these because I think most people know what these are. But I'm going to jump to another list here. Excuse me, I've been a little under the weather for the last week, so if I'm coughing, please forgive me. So these are additional on-set jobs. So there are so many more than this list. This is a tiny, tiny drop in the bucket.
Yeah, and I think this list that we've got here on the screen is taken from many different departments. So you've got several different departments on set. You've got sound, wardrobe, makeup and hair, lighting, camera, production,
props.
What am I missing, Fletch? Props.
Yeah.
Art department.
Greens.
And so you have all those jobs. I mean, it's literally an army. I was surprised when I was working on Minority Report, we had a crew. I think our crew list was about 300. So there are a lot of jobs, and they all sort of fall in those departments. But we wanted to focus on a few that you may not be aware of.
So we're going to start off with a production manager, and this is really just a hands-on. He does a lot of this person will do a lot of the jobs that a producer does. And they kind of really manage the office and that sort of thing.
And they're the ones that are really sort of responsible. I mean, there is a line producer, which is above the production manager, but the production manager really is the one that's keeping the budget on task, the one that's keeping the, hiring the crew, bringing the crew on, setting the salaries, and liaising with the line producer and the accountant, and really sort of like its title says, is really managing the production and kind of keeping everything rolling.
You have an office coordinator. This is the person who just makes sure that in the office everything is working smoothly inside the office. Everybody's moving here and there. They'll handle a lot of the flights or the travel and that sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Production coordinators.
It's a big job. It's a big job.
Well-oiled machine.
A bad boy or grip. Some people have seen these on a movie credit list and don't quite know what they are. And really, to break it down for you, both of these kind of land in the lighting department underneath the gaffer. So there's two kinds of lighting on a movie set. There's grip lighting and there's electrical lighting. And the grip light has a person in charge of all the grips. So if you'll notice on a movie crew list, you'll see, a gaffer, and then you'll see a key grip, and then a whole bunch of grips. Like you'll have, on a big movie, you might have 20 or 30 grips. And these people really fall underneath the key grip. The key grip is the person who's in charge of all the grips. Now on the other electrical lighting side of things, you have the best boy. So the best boy then is in charge of all the electricians, which are handling all of the lights that actually have power running to them. So that's, in case you're wondering, that's that particular job.
Give us an idea, Fletch, of what the salaries of, just maybe in the grip department or the electric department, being the key grip.
I mean, you could probably from it's. I mean, obviously these things range. You're going to have a range all the way from high big budget movies like Marvel movies and stuff like that, all the way down to the independent film. So you should a key grip is probably somewhere between, I would say on an independent movie you might be able to do something at like $300 to $400 a day, and then all the way up to like a bigger movie is probably upwards of what, $600-700 a day probably.
I would say $700-800 a day.
So that gives you an idea of that perspective range. We got a question here. This is always fun to answer questions. We'll just mark this as a question. I'll think back to this in just a minute, Jeff. Let's get through this. Keep asking those questions, though. Mark these as questions, and we'll have a whole Q&A at the end. So we'll get there to these. You have a production assistant. This is the entry-level job on any movie set. It doesn't matter if you've really gone to college or not, or where you studied. It doesn't matter. This is pretty much where everybody starts as a production assistant. And this is really kind of the grease that holds together any production on set or in the office. You need people. You need hands to do things. You need people to run and take care of things and run errands and pick up things. And that's all handled by the production assistant or the PA. And there's usually lots of them on any movie set. Some of them are paid. On any big movie, they're all paid. But you can probably, if you're going to try and be a PA, and this is a really good entry-level job. So if you get onto a movie set, this is a great way to get on, is go on and say, I'll work for free. Because they're going to tell you they're all crewed up. No, we don't have any positions for you. And then you say, well, I'll work for free. And most productions won't pass the opportunity to have somebody that can do these errands, that can do these jobs, and they're not technically skilled people necessarily at this point. They're just, everybody's kind of noob at this point. but they learn very, very quickly.
Each department, you know, say your interest is, you know, if I could give some advice to young kids that are wanting to get into the business, kind of figure out where is it that you want to end up. So say I want to be a cinematographer, then I would go to the DP or someone in that department and offer to be the very entry level job, which, you know, which might be working for free. And it's the,
it might
you
be
know,
a PA who picks up the film and takes it to the lab, or, you know, now we have DITs, but you know, that's a job, and that's a PA's job, is hauling that footage.
Yeah, and so every department has that low entry level type of person. So whatever your interest is, go into that department and go all the way to the bottom. You know, you start in that bottom position. And I mean, that's, you know, Fletch made my first introduction to a production company, and I went in and I thought I was going to be Mr. Big Cheese, and, you know, I
didn't you ask to act in it? You wanted to be the star?
Yeah, I went into the production office and offered my services to be the, you know, any of the leading roles, and unfortunately they said that those were all filled. So I left the office a little bit downtrodden, and sat out in the lobby and thought, well, I guess I could do a supporting role. So I went back in and offered to be a supporting role, and the production coordinator, who I was talking to because she was in the office, said, well, sorry, but we filled all those positions. And so then I went out into the lobby and a little downtrodden, and went back in a few minutes later and offered to be one of the, you know, the main crew members. And at that point, she thought I was crazy, and of course all the crew were staffed also, and I don't know, I think I went out to the lobby a couple more times and finally came back in and said, hey, I'll work for free. And then she was like, oh, okay, well, we might be able to find you something. And that's how I started my first gig, was working for free after I offered to be the main role, leading role.
And they turned you down. That's crazy.
I mean, I did have the looks back then, so I don't know why they didn't cast me next to Bruce Boxleitner.
Oh, that's right. Oh, that's what it was.
I was not cast in that film, so.
But you were a PA.
Free.
You were a PA, and we'll come back to this story because this is a good story about how you remain a PA. So let's go back to our list here. And as a PA, you can probably expect to make anywhere from free, and you shouldn't have to do more than one project for free, because once you get credits, and are extremely important. Once you start establishing your name and your credit base, you shouldn't have to continue to work for free. And you will be introduced to all sorts of new people on that film. And I'll tell you right now, the way you get a job in this business is by knowing people. And we'll come back to this because that's our last slide. So we'll come back to this topic. All right. So switching back. Let's see what a best boy production assistant is. A stunt coordinator. So stunt coordinator, he's the guy who's in charge of all the stunt players. So he does the hiring and the firing and the making sure that all the stunts are safe. This is the person who a lot of times it's not uncommon to find that the stunt coordinator is also the second unit director. They usually have a very good grasp of visuals and how to make things safe and how to shoot fight sequences to make them look real and all that kind of stuff. So that is very common stunt coordinator to see that duplicitous role.
And that might, you know, the reason we bring that up is that might be a job that you've never thought of. You know, I mean, we all know makeup, hair, wardrobe, lighting, but you know, stunts. Yeah, it does take training, but stunt coordinating and doing stunts is one that's not always thought of. I like the choreographer.
Yeah, choreographer is another one. I mean, how many people think of, you know, anytime you see a dance on a movie screen, someone choreographed that. You know, someone put that together and assembled all that. And I have the illustrious credit to my title that I did what was it, High School Musical 3? Or whatever the theatrical one was. I don't remember what it was. I think it's 3. And I spent over a month in a dance recital room working with the director and the choreographer and the actors, working through a lot of these kind of scenarios. And believe me, these people work really hard to make that all come together. They don't just show up and start dancing, that's for sure. They worked for months to make that happen.
Okay.
Let's see. So back to our list. A set medic. Now, this is an interesting job because a lot of people don't ever think about, oh, well, what about, I've studied to be a nurse or I've studied to be an EMT. Well, guess what? There's a place for you at the table, at the entertainment table, because every movie set is required by law to have a set medic on set. So if someone gets hurt, there's somebody to take care of them. And so this is something that is ubiquitous on every set. They have to have it. So if your skill set lies in the medical realm, guess what? There's a place for you. And that's what you'll find a lot of times in the film industry is that regardless of what you do for a living, there's likely a place to transition to, move to into the film industry, because the film industry is so broad and has to cover so many aspects that it utilizes a lot of these disciplines.
Or vice versa. If you don't quite make it in the film industry, you can go off and be a medic.
Yeah, you might. Yeah, that's true. That is true. So, visual effects supervisor. This is someone that comes in during pre-production and helps to visualize the visual effects and helps on set to make sure that the various shots are performed in such a way that they'll be able to do the proper CGI or different composites and stuff like that in post-production. So they're on set with you for those shots. And in fact, the visual effects supervisor will be the one directing those particular shots that have a lot of visual effects in them. That person will actually call action and cut and that kind of stuff. So it's a little bit of a handoff when you're doing a visual effects shot to these people because they're looking at something completely different. They're not looking at performance. The director is still the director. That person's going to be handling the actors and making sure that he's getting the performance they want. But it's the visual effects supervisor who really controls set and is deciding if things were shot correctly and why they need to go again if they didn't. Let's see. How about a production accountant? So if you're an accountant, a person who handles payroll or those kinds of things, there is definitely a role for you in the movie business because any big movie has lots of accountants who are monitoring where all the money is going, making sure that everybody gets paid on time and taxes are done correctly and that the studio knows where all the money is going so no one's playing with funny money.
And with a film, you're spending money at such a high rate. Any mistakes have to be caught right away. I mean, the accountant is critically important, and it's also the accountant's important to the whole formula because you got to be able to turn to them in an hour's notice and say, where are we at on our budget? And they got to know because you're spending money so fast. Oh, I'll get you that answer by next week. You've already spent all the money.
That's not going to work. Yeah, I always found that making friends with the accounting department was my #1 priority on any movie because they're the people who pay you, and you want to be friends with those kind of people. You know what I mean? They can make your life miserable, or they can be your friend. And I always found that having friends in the accounting department was always a good thing. A caterer, again, someone who, if you like food or if you like making food, caterers make pretty decent money on movies because every movie is catered. At some point, there will be a food truck that will pull up and everyone goes out and gets lunch from the food truck, or it might be set up for them at a table that they can go down and pick what they want. But every movie is catered. And there's good reason for that. That they've done lots of studies about letting people go and then expecting them to come back and having an effective work day after lunch. And what happens is when you let people go, they don't always come back on time. They might get in car accidents. They might get stuck in traffic. All sorts of things might happen to them. And it's just much more cost effective when you know you're spending all that money every day, and it's a lot of money. It's so much more cost effective to just plunk down some money, keep everybody there in a single place, and then when you're done with lunch, you can just say, okay, we're back. And that might have been 30 minutes. You could have a 30-minute lunch and you're back. And everybody's back at once, and we're all ready to go, and you don't have to worry about, props is
somebody
stuck
want to order a dessert like Fletch always does, got to have a
What's
dessert.
That? Desserts, yes, yeah, you get dessert too. I love it.
It takes an extra 20 minutes to get that
That's
lava.
Okay. That's all right. Dessert is worth an extra 20 minutes. Okay, so that's the caterer. A second, I always, this is always kind of a funny job title. The second is part of the production team, starting with the first assistant director. So the first assistant director is kind of the sheriff in town. He really monitors the set and makes sure that the set is running smoothly, and you're getting all your days and you're getting all the shots that you need for those days. And they're also the ones that prepare the schedule, the shooting schedule in pre-production. But they have a whole bunch of teams under them. And PAs fall under them at the very, very bottom. But right below the first assistant director is, of course, Chet.
The second assistant director.
It's complicated. The first assistant and then the second assistant. And then oddly enough, and it's different in England, but oddly enough in the United States, I don't know why they did this, but it's called the second. So this person obviously didn't like coming third. So they called him
third is just a loser to the second.
The second. And really, you'll find the second doing the call sheets and things like that during the day. You'll find them helping out with the background action with extras and that sort of thing. They're also overall the PAs. So that's what second, which is interesting. But there are so many more that we could go on and on and on for hours, but we just don't have time. So if you have a particular on-set title that you want us to go into, write it down in the questions. We'll come back to it. So moving on now to the studio, the uncredited people. These are all the people who you didn't see in the credit list. And this was Chet for a long time, for many years at DreamWorks. Why don't you do the studio stuff, Chet?
Sure. So on the studio level, there's a lot going on behind the scenes. I mean, you've got everything that supports the actual making of the film before the film is made and after. And so it's and also it's a support team while the film is going on. So the first item was development. So there's a whole team, crew of people, which is the development team, and they have to feed the pipeline. The Hollywood pipeline is once a film's in production, studio might put out 3 to 7 films a year, and so there's to every film that comes out in the theater, there's probably 20 or 30 that are just in the pipeline in development. And so that development team on the studio side, it's called the feature development team, with TVs and commercials and all that kind of stuff. There's different aspects of it, but in the feature world, there's a feature development group, and they are just, and the jobs that are available over there are all, president and to executive VPs to VPs to creative executives to junior creative executives to PAs and down to the mailroom. And so those jobs, they're all creative jobs coming in with figuring out exactly what is going to be the next film. And it's kind of a fun environment of, in the studio system, we're going to talk about here in a second, there's agents and managers, but on the studio level side, you're coordinating and building relationships with all those different networking with all those different people to find the next piece of material, which would be a script or a book or manuscript that is going to be developed into the next movie. And so there's a whole group of jobs that just go with that in creating the pipeline. After development, you've got operations, and that's more of you've got backlots. There's all kinds of jobs that are there. Is that what you're talking about, Fletch? There with set operations?
Just operations in general for a studio. So you've got the fire departments that sit on the lot. Right. You've got construction departments and lumber yards, property and greens, right, and all these other departments that you have to make sure they all come together for any movie.
Yeah, and so there's hundreds of jobs there. Marketing. Oh yeah. Which really dives into the distribution element. So once the film is done, there's a whole marketing team that is armed to get the film out and for it to be successful. You can have a great film, but if there's no marketing to it, then nobody knows about it and nobody goes to see it. And so, on a studio level, there's a few hundred in the marketing team in distribution, because you've got guys that are creating the posters, and what's interesting about it is there's that feature development team, the development team that we talked about originally. All of the stuff is feeding to that team, from production. If it's on set dailies are coming in, that feature development team is looking at the dailies, and if they find that there are issues with the director, they'll fly somebody out and go work with that director to make sure they get what they need coming in. They're watching the numbers, so they're working with that production manager and the accountants and really liaising with them. So then afterwards, in the marketing side of it, there's they're coordinating, they're building this. What are the billboards going to look like? How many, theaters are we going to be in? So you've got a person that's coordinating the billboards. You got a person coordinating the posters. You got a person coordinating the prints. Prints all have to get there, whether they're digital or, film prints, depending on if there's a few theaters or many theaters out there that are still showing prints. Those all have to get.
There's literally people companies who get hired just to cut the trailers for movies, and that's part of this same team.
Absolutely, trailers. There's a whole team that is in charge of doing screenings, and they'll do hundreds of screenings around the country for a single movie that's coming out, just to build word of mouth. And so there are free screenings for people to go, and they're happening all over the country in every city. and I at one point I was working with that team, setting up, making those appointments and making those, setting up those screenings. And then there's somebody out standing in line that's trying to get people to come and see that movie, and so on the marketing side, hundreds of jobs that are pretty exciting and creative.
Yeah, they are good jobs. And one thing I want to circle back to this, Chet, is about how all of these jobs, that's our last question. So I want to circle back to this, but how jobs like this, like what you're just talking about in marketing, doesn't mean you're going to be in marketing the rest of your life. So we'll come back to that.
Mm-hmm. And then business affairs, there's always a huge legal team that's managing everything, because every piece of material that we bring in has to have a contract, has to have a chain of title. We have to have the rights, and every actor that's on a film has to be contracted for the amount of money. What's his back-end participation? What are they getting paid up front? do they have Fuji water in their trailer? I mean, it's a little crazy. And there's music. If there's music on board, the composer, he has to have a deal. Everyone has to have a deal. Are they getting existing music? They're getting the rights for those those things. There's contracts with the distributors and the exhibitors. What's the split going to be? If you're Star Wars, you can demand a 0 to 100% split, which means the first week the theater gets 0, they get the popcorn sales, and Disney gets 100% of the box office. And that may go on for a couple of weeks. And then week 3, it goes to a 5%, 95% split, and down, My Big Fat Greek Wedding.
Just Marvel and Star Wars are probably the only two that could probably pull that off.
Yeah. And so anyway, there's business affairs. They are busy bees. So those of you that, that have students that want to be in, that argue a lot, send them the legal direction to business affairs.
I mean, a lot of those guys, though, have, they have legal backgrounds. So in entertainment law and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, they're all attorneys.
Yeah, and if you want to be in law, there's still a place for you at the entertainment table. And entertainment law is a lot more fun than, say, divorce law.
I don't know. Yeah, one of the things that I would say about that, Fletch, is, just kind of giving experience here. When I left college and decided to move to LA, I started out temping just to get a job. I couldn't get a job anywhere, so I started out as a temp. And I got in and went. What's that?
For the studios.
For the studios, yeah. And they sent me kind of all over. And one of the places that they did send me was business affairs over at Disney. And what's important is no matter what job you're doing, that you do it the best that you can do it. Because what came out of that in business affairs is they offered me a job. Now, everyone, there's something that, if there's one principle that I could teach, young students out there, is figure out kind of where you want to end up, right? So I mentioned this a little bit, if you want to be a cinematographer, wherever you can get a job, first of all, get a job, because that starts to build those relationships and that networking. But if you do have a choice to get a job in the production department as a production assistant or in the camera department as a production assistant, decide where you want to be and target the bottom of that rung. So I tell this story because I was offered a job to work in business affairs at Disney, because I went over, I worked hard, and they liked me, they liked the work ethic, and they wanted to hire me. And that was, I had to kind of analyze it and go, okay, well, I'm young in my career. I don't have a lot of responsibilities at home or that kind of stuff. So now is the time to make the decision. And so I chose to turn that job down, because once you sort of start on the rung of a ladder, I would start to climb that ladder in, business affairs. And I'm not an attorney. I don't have a law degree, so I didn't really have that far to go. And so I decided not to take that job and to continue to do bottom entry-level jobs until I sort of got that one that was kind of on the right path, and then I started to go up. So I think that's an interesting concept in getting jobs in the business. Kind of figure out where you want to be, and then target the bottom.
As a department, yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Right.
Okay, on to our next slide.
Agencies. So there's a
whole people often don't think about, other than to say, oh, well, it's his agent. It's his agent or his manager. I mean, maybe those are the two things that people think about in those two respects. But it's a lot more than that.
It's a lot more than that. I mean, the agencies and managers really are the ones that are pushing the talent out to the studios. And
not
there's
just
a ton of jobs.
Now, there's a ton of jobs, but it's not just the talent, because what happens is you have so there's a handful of really big agencies. Like William Morris is a big agency, CAA is a big agency. Endeavor was bought, so I don't know where they emerged.
It's William Morris Endeavor. Yeah.
Oh,
so
it's
they
William
kind of
Morris.
merged
Okay.
that.
So what they do is they manage people like Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman or Tom Hanks or someone like that.
Yeah.
And those people have their own production companies, so they have projects that they want to be doing. So what they do is they say, well, we also represent this person and this person and this person and this director and this writer, and pretty soon a big agency can cobble together a really great package
Mm-hmm.
in the studio. So it's not just a talent agency. These people create content. They put teams together that are almost unstoppable. So now what happens is they go out to the studios and say, hey, we've got the next Tom Cruise movie. Here it is. And it's got this director attached to it, and it's got this writer attached to it, and this composer, and these other actors. Do you want it? And all the studios start falling all over themselves to see what it is that CA has. And oftentimes with projects like that, they get bought almost instantly, because you can't pass on the next Tom Cruise movie or the next Tom Hanks movie or the next Chris Pratt movie or whatever it might be. And so there's a lot of power and control that comes out of these talent agencies that most people in the business don't fully comprehend. So they want to be on set where they think the action is taking place. And there's two kinds of movie makers. There's filmmakers who are on set and the journeyman taking, calling action and cut and capturing the image. But there's the other set of people are called, what I call, these are the deal makers. These are the people who get the movies made. One group makes the movies, but the other group actually gets the movies made. And talent agencies are a major component in this respect.
And the term for that is packaging. That they package together a project and it goes. Because they have these big agencies, they're able to pull together the team that is attractive to a studio. But adding to that, there's so agencies. It's important to understand there are different types of agents and agencies. So the ones that Fletch just listed off, those really are the big ones that are representing actors, writers, directors. Those are kind of the three big agencies and that represent the talent. But then you have agencies that are representing cinematographers, agencies that are representing above the line and below the line. So it just they don't there are no agents that represent PAs, but I might start one. But there's but they represent production designers, art directors, and so their job is to get these people work, because every job they get, someone a job, they get 10%. So the agent gets 10% of the gig that he gets. The manager gets 10%, and the entertainment attorney gets 5%. So 25% of that guy's salary is going to his representation. And so anyway, agencies are pretty cool to work for. And now, if you have a bit more of a legal background, agencies are the place to be, because they're the ones that are cutting the deals. A lot of attorneys, a lot of people will take entertainment law and then go become an agent or a manager. Obviously, if you studied entertainment law, you could become a lawyer, but entertainment lawyer. But a lot of the agents and managers have that background of a legal background.
And so for those people a lot of people will have an entertainment attorney who actually ends up doing all their deals as well, and they just pay them less. They pay them the 5%. And they don't have to pay the extra 20% to the talent agency. But that talent agency is out there marketing and shopping and
very valuable,
worth every penny.
Yeah. And so in that hierarchy of the agency, you have the executives, and then you have assistants, you have junior executives and assistants, all the way down to the mailroom. And you might, the is the mailroom, where you start in the mailroom and you're delivering the mail. And guess what? While you're delivering the mail, you get to know all the other assistants and all the other agents as you're taking their mail and dropping it off. And you're the first one to find out that there's a job opening on so-and-so's desk as an assistant because you're in the mailroom. Yep. And it's a great place to be, to network. I mean, my route was the studio route, but the agency route is a good one because everyone is coming to the agents for material, right? So that feature side, that the studio side is coming to the agent. So you get to know all those people. It's a great place to network.
Did Scott Rudin come from the agency side? I think he did, didn't he? Those kinds of people becoming huge producers.
He became, yeah, he's a huge producer. I'm not sure if he was on the agency side. I'm not sure.
I don't know that for a fact, but it wouldn't surprise me a bit if people like him come from that place where they already have so many deals, you know, packaging different actors and stuff, and then they just, I'm going to produce this one, and then suddenly they're producers. And Scott Rudin is one of the biggest, most prolific producers in the business.
Was Michael Iger, Disney? I think he was. I think he was an agent. Huh?
Michael Eisner.
Yeah, Iger's.
Bob Iger.
Yeah, Eisner was an agent.
Yeah, he wasn't very beloved. I remember.
Anyway, what's that?
He was not very beloved by many. So those were talent agencies. Legal and entertainment law is the next one, and we kind of covered this already.
We kind of covered that.
Yeah, a lot of studios like to have people on their desk who know a little bit about entertainment law, so that they can close deals or give advice and that sort of thing. It's really handy.
If there's anything in education, you know, students are trying to figure out. Oh, I just want to have a solid background. Law is a great. I mean, I can't tell you how many contracts I've done. I mean, I bet I would have my law degree if the number of contracts that I've done and written, and I haven't written them from scratch, but you know, modified, and deals that have been made. Dude, I'd be a good lawyer. That would be handy. I wouldn't like it, but I'd be a good one.
All right, moving on. Post-production. So this is after the lights go out and the cameras turn off, and suddenly we're all back into dark black rooms watching the film come together. There's a whole litany of new jobs that appear, and oftentimes these don't appear in post-production credits or in the credits at the end of a movie either. Usually they do, but a lot of these people will get dropped off because they just forget about them, or it wasn't important, or they're just part of the actual production crew. And now, you know, so, but this involves people like colorists. So nowadays we color every movie. I don't know if most people know that, but in the olden days when we used to shoot film, your director of photography would be called what's a negative shooter, which means that they would put certain filters over the lens, or they should light just a specific way, and they would match every exposure and the color on every shot in camera. It was all planned out. Those kind of DPs are extremely rare now. In fact, I don't even know that more than probably a dozen exist that can actually shoot negative, and you don't have to color it. So nowadays we shoot all digital, and we shoot with any profiles, and so it looks like mud when you're shooting it, but then you pull it into a post-production facility, and a colorist then goes in and pulls out all the color and gives you the color that you want, that you didn't achieve on set. So it's done a little bit differently. It's done in post-production now than it was, you know, I would say, what, 20 years ago? Yeah, probably 20 years ago. You had to be a negative shooter, but now not so much.
But there's so many in post-production.
Foley, you have sound, you have sound mixers, you've got sound designers,
sound editors.
Sound editors, you've got Foley artists, you've got voiceover artists, you have sound effects designers. I mean, the list goes on and on and on in post-production on your film. Visual effects, that's when visual effects really starts to pull together their teams and to build models and to all that other kind of stuff. That's all done in post.
You've got loopers. Have you ever seen a looping team work? Where it's just a group of about 10 people, and they're doing all the crowd voices and all the
right
walking past the microphone, and man, they're an art form, and they get paid well. I had a friend that
it would surprise me a bit,
part of one of those teams, and they get, they're SAG actors, and they get residuals on every. I mean, these guys they're getting check after check after check, and all they were doing was the crowd in the background. And they're like, geez, give me that job.
Right.
It's the Seinfeld episode when he's signing all those checks that are like for a penny, and his hand's all cramped up. Kramer's hands is cramped up. That's what they do, man. So anyway. So post-production is just, there's
a ton of jobs in post-production, and these are just the ones that actually interact with the film. You remember, all of these are post-production houses and facilities, so they have operations people, and they have coordinators, and they have there's a post-production coordinator. There's all these different people who come to life after the end of the show and at the end of the production and begin during post-production. So this is completely huge. There's so many jobs, I can't even begin to touch any of them. Moving on to our last, before we go to the Q&A, this is our last slide. How do you get those jobs? Where do you start? Where you start does not mean that is where you will end up. That's an important aspect of this to understand. So when we talk about getting in as a PA, we don't expect you to spend your life on errands and picking up donuts and coffee for people. That's not what you get into this business for. But you need a large degree of patience in this business. If I could tell a student anything, I would say, I hear this all the time. Kids will graduate and they say, I'm going to go to Los Angeles. I'm going to give it everything I've got for 2 years. And if I can't make it, I'll go home. And I always tell them, stay home. Just stay home. It's way easier. You're going to go out there, you're going to have your heart stomped and your dreams shattered, and you're going to come back broken and miserable because you only have 2 years. The odds on you actually going out there and making it in 2 years, pretty darn small. Like I can't give you the actual odds, but it's very small. Now, if you tell me I'm going out there and I'm not coming back until I make it, now you have me. Now you have what it takes to make it in this business. And 20 years later, and you still haven't made it, and you're still digging in, and you're still trying, and you're still swinging, welcome to the entertainment industry. Because that's really what it is. It's constantly trying to push yourself further and further. There's some people that can market their progress pretty easily, and they can chart it. I think Brigham Taylor is one of those that, started on someone's desk as an assistant and proved himself, and he stepped up, and he stepped up.
At Disney.
At Disney, yeah, and he just kept stepping, and after numerous years, it wasn't 2. After a dozen years, he was probably at where he wanted to be, or where he felt like he could be good at his job.
Mm-hmm.
And now 18 years later or so, 18 or 19 years later, he's one of their top producers and is producing feature films. I mean, his first one was The Jungle Book that Disney did. I think his last one was Christopher Robin that was just in theaters, and now he's working on what is it, Lady and the Tramp, I think. So,
yeah.
But it took him 20 years to get there, and I think that's really, really important. If you want to be a director, it might take 40 years. If you want to be an actor, it may look. Steve Carell is a good example. Steve Carell went out to Hollywood. He tried to make it for many, many, many years and couldn't make a dent. And then he does one little show, and suddenly it's huge, and everybody wants a piece of him. And this happens all the time. So you can't give up after 2 years and walk away and say, well, I didn't make it. I just wasn't good enough. Well, you weren't good enough because you keep trying. This is a really difficult business. It's probably one of the most competitive businesses in the world.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to add to that, is that it is one of the most competitive businesses in the world, yet the point of this whole discussion is that there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of jobs in different areas of focus. And so you just have to figure out, what are your passions? What do you love doing? What are you good at? And where do you want to be? And then you just start to target it at the bottom level, right? And you go in and you get any way to get in. And it may not be in the place, like I said before, where exactly where you want to be, but get the nose of the camel in the tent of the sandstorm. And then once your nose is in there, then you can start to move around, and you can get all the way in the tent, and then you can shift. I think it's important. The other piece of advice, which I've given a little bit earlier today, but is once you get in, really look at your focus of where you want to be, and get to that bottom level as soon as you can. So I may enter in, say I want to be in feature development, but I just can't get into feature development. I may enter in distribution somewhere at the low level free paying job, but then I'm going to look for every opportunity to get over, cross the rungs of whatever you want to call it, the ladders of different departments or whatever, to get where I want to be and start at the bottom there. But once the key is getting in. And the other advantage that we have is that these films are really expensive to make. And so everyone is always pinching the dollar. And so if you go in coming out of school and you offer to work for free, you're pretty likely to get in, you know. And this is a whole other discussion. But once you start to get in, the person that you want to really be in good with isn't like, if I want to go to Imagine and want to be working for Ron Howard, the person to get to know is not Ron Howard. So many students come out of school thinking, if I could just get one meeting with Ron Howard, he's going to see my talent and he'll hire me to be his producer. Well, I got news for you. He's not looking for a producer. He's got Brian Grazer and his crazy hair going on that's producing for him, right? But the person that's the most important at Imagine Entertainment is the person at the front desk that's answering the phones. That's the person for you that's the most important, because that's the person that when, you know, Ron Howard, they say, or somebody in the company says, we need somebody to take the trash out. Hey, you at the front desk, can you find somebody to take the trash out? Well, if you've been working all your months coming out of school trying to get that one meeting with Ron Howard and sending him emails because somehow you got his email from your aunt who knows his brother-in-law, that's the worst way to go. The best way to get in there to take the trash out is through knowing that the lower level rung people, because they're the ones that are willing to network because they want to move up and they don't know. They're like, oh, this kid looks talented. He might be somebody. So I am just answering the front desk phone. And if this kid gets hired somewhere else, I want to make sure I know him and I'm on, or her, and I'm on her, in her Rolodex or in her phone. And that's one of the biggest misconceptions I see out there in getting jobs and going after jobs, is that everybody shoots for the top. Have the goal at the top, but work your way at the bottom.
Yeah. Spend your time earning your stripes. Yeah. For sure.
5 o'clock. We had a couple of questions. One of the questions was,
questions, so we'll turn it over to sort of a Q&A here. Here's the first one.
We had somebody. Yeah, there we go. I like that. Look at that. That's kind of cool.
My name is Bella.
So Bella is studying Chinese
language.
and
How
she's
do I
asking.
use this on set? Are these productions in LA or elsewhere that can use my dual language skills in the future? Oh my goodness, yes. Let's see. So first of all, you're learning Chinese. Boy, how do I even describe this one? Because this is you've got in front of yourself a very good opportunity. China is going in, as far as entertainment is concerned, China consumes about 10 times the amount of entertainment that Americans do. They are building. What did Joe say recently? Like 100 new movie theaters a month or something like that. It's some insane.
It's crazy.
Number.
I can't imagine how they're filling them up, but
I don't know. But the point of the matter is that that the Chinese don't know how to make good movies yet. They just haven't figured it out, and so they're looking to.
Don't tell the Chinese that.
Yeah, this is not broadcast in China. Okay. But they're looking for Hollywood to help them with this, and so probably recently you've probably noticed that a lot of the films are being shot, some portions of them anyway, in China. Some of the Mission Impossible films and things like that have been shot in China because China is putting up a lot of money in order to participate in some of these movies. And they require for that money you to shoot some portion of that film in China. So by all means, China is a white field ready to harvest. And if you can speak Chinese and you have production experience, you are going to be extremely valuable to any production company.
Well, and this speaks to a larger sort of concept here, because this is a great question, and it's not necessary. It's not just about speaking Chinese, or it's about what is it that makes you unique and valuable. So for Bella, being able to speak Chinese makes her unique and valuable. And so, Bella, you should target your direction to where that asset, that arrow in your quiver, is going to help you get a job. And so how do you target a company that maybe, STX, I think, is out of China. I think, aren't they out of China? Anyway, but there are lots of companies that have Chinese ties to them. What did you say, Fletch? Sorry, I didn't hear you.
China Film Group is another one there.
Yeah. So it's what is it, as for students, what is it that makes you unique and valuable? You might be able to, you're the best. You really shovel horse manure really well. So what productions are doing Westerns? And then that's your tie, whatever it is that makes you valuable, And
I mean, the truth of the matter is, we laugh about that, but the truth is that one of our producing partners got his start shoveling manure on Western films. And I think it was the film with Shane that he was on. Mm-hmm. And he eventually became an Oscar-winning producer for Schindler's List, and also produced Jurassic Park. So understand this, and this is the perfect way to end this discussion, that where you start is not where you're going to end up. So don't think, oh, well, all I could get was a job in the mailroom. Well, guess what? Lots of successful filmmakers started with a job in the mailroom.
Jeffrey Katzenberg.
You would not be the first, and you won't be the last. Now, the trick to making this all work, because it doesn't just happen because you got a job in the mailroom, is your work ethic has to be better and more professional than anybody else. It's got to be 110% every day, because if you miss, all you've got to stop from falling through the gaps and falling back into your chair at home, away from Hollywood, out of the industry, is your personality. So you need to be easy to work with, easygoing, very likable, don't burn bridges, and work as hard as you possibly can. And in time, with that degree of patience that you've got when you go there, in time you will make it. But it takes time, and it takes a lot of effort, and it takes a really winning personality that people just want to be around. and you'll get those jobs. And pretty soon you won't be mailroom. A buddy down the street is a cinematographer, and he needs a new actress in his, student film. And suddenly, who knew? Off you go, you get cast, and somebody recognizes you at a film festival, and it's all over. I mean, it happened just like that.
And the only principle I'd add to that is that everyone that you work with, treat them as though they might be the one that would hire you next. I don't care where they're at. If they're below you, above you, beside you, or they're the ones that are taking out the trash and you're answering the phone, they're not taking out the trash for long. If they're the best trash taker out in the world, they're gonna move their way up. They're gonna get promoted. So you need to treat everyone and network with everyone as though they might be the one that hires you next, because they might.
That's what I was told, 30 years ago when I first started. I had a lunch with a filmmaker, very, very one of the most talented producers I ever worked with, and I went to go get the bill for lunch. I had invited him to lunch, so I went to get the bill, and he grabbed it, and he said, "I'm making more than you are right now anyway, and someday you're going to be hiring me rather than me hiring you." And it hasn't happened yet, but you never know.
It's only been 25 years, for another 20 before,
At least 25. I think it's actually almost 30, close to 30. Okay, one more question. Unless somebody has more questions, this is going to be our last one. So one more question. This is Jeff. If this webinar is backed up, I would like to share it with my students. Oh, lucky you. We usually publish these, Jeff, just after about 30 minutes after the broadcast. It'll be available in the tutorial section for your students, but also under your profile menu, you'll see a thing called A Night on the Lot. And we like to put these also right there just for giggles. I guess there's no reason to put them under your profile other than we wanted to set them apart and make them more than just tutorials. But that's where those will be. Okay. So without more questions, did you want to add something to that?
That's it.
That's it. All right, let's wrap up then. Hey, thanks everybody. We do these every single month, and you'll continue to be on the mailing list. So join us next time, where we will be talking to Tristan Whitman is our guest speaker next month, and he was a professor of cinematography at USC, one of the probably the most prestigious film school in the world. So he's going to have a lot of great tips and tricks and comments about for your students about cinematography. So thanks y'all for coming out, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Good night and good luck.